Hello dear students, welcome back to this class of English. Students, in today's class, we'll go through lesson number 4 from the diary of Anne Frank from your main English reader book, First Flight. The diary of Anne Frank tells the story of Anne and her family's struggle while they were hiding during World War II. The family hoped to evade Nazis because of their Jewish faith. So, let us now read it and know more about the biography, the life story of Anne Frank. Well, who has not heard about Anne Frank, the name which is synonymous with Hitler's rule, where the world saw one of the most inhumane era under the Nazi regime? Students, Anne Frank was born in 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. She was one of the most famous victims of the Holocaust, the devastation, and is best known for her diary of a young girl. She moved from Germany to the Netherlands with her family in 1930 after Hitler gained power. However, the Germans invaded the Netherlands in 1940. The increasing persecution of Jews forced her family to go in hiding in 1942 during those 2 years. And she spent her time writing stories and writing in her diary. For your information, students, another family consisting of 3 people and a dentist also hid with the Franks. This meant that 8 people hid in the small secret annex that was attached to the back of Mr. Frank's business. So, coming back to the story, Anne hoped to be a writer. However, when her family transported to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, she died of typhus a few days after the death of her sister Margot Frank. Actually, while they were hiding in the secret annex, Anne, who was only 13, started the process of growing up and maturing while dealing with the realities of the war and the fear of being killed. Unfortunately, after 2 years of hiding, someone reported their hiding space to the Nazis, and everyone was captured and sent to concentration camps. Her father was the only one in her family who survived the Holocaust. And then, after her death, after the war, he spent the rest of his life publishing and talking about his daughter's work. Her father got her diary republished. The Diary of a Young Girl, which was originally published in Dutch in 1947, was translated into more than 60 languages. It chronicled the various events of Anne Frank's life from 12th June 1942 to 1st August 1944 under the Nazi occupation. The short story from the diary of Anne Frank is an extract actually from the diary of a young girl with a slight adaptation. It portrays her personal reflection on writing on family, friends, and school. Through her words, we got to know Anne Frank as any other 13-year-old girl. As because the tone of the diary of a 13 to 15-year-old girl is youthful. To be fair, Anne does have many surprisingly mature insights into life, war, interpersonal relationships, and much more. So, let's take a look at it. From the Diary of a Young Girl of Anne Frank by Anne Frank, paper has more patience than people. Anne Frank thought of this saying as she sat alone at home, wondering whether to go out or not. She decided not to and thought about writing in a diary. What she needed was a friend. This didn't mean that she was lonely. Rather, Anne Frank had a loving family and 30 people she could call friends. However, with friends, she felt like talking about ordinary things and having a good time rather than talking about her secrets. This she felt was unlikely to change, so she decided to start a diary. It was a strange experience for her writing. She had never written anything before. She also didn't believe anyone would be interested in what she had to say. But that didn't matter. She felt like writing. She also felt a great need to get things off her chest. Finally, she wanted a friend, so she named her diary Kitty. She began by giving a brief introduction to her family. Her parents were Otto and Edith Frank. They emigrated to Holland. Anne and Margot, her sister, was raised by their grandmother before they joined their parents. Her grandmother underwent an operation in 1941 and then passed away in 1942. Anne often thought of her. So, having made introductions, she wrote to Kitty on 20th June 1942. Her entire class was terrified of the upcoming teachers' meeting. In this meeting, the teachers would decide who would move to the next grade. Anne, irritated by her classmates, wrote that at least a quarter of the class deserved to fail. But she also knew that the teachers were the most unpredictable creatures on earth. For herself, she was not too worried. All they could do was wait and not lose heart. She believed she got along well with her teachers. However, Mr. Keesing, the maths teacher, was annoyed with her for talking in class. So he assigned her extra homework. It was an essay on the subject a chatterbox. That evening, Anne thought over this topic. What she wanted was to come up with a convincing argument as to why one should talk rather than write an unnecessarily long essay. So she argued that she inherited this habit from her mother, and there was nothing that could be done about inherited traits. Though Mr. Keesing enjoyed the argument, he assigned her a second essay when she talked through his class again. Mr. Keesing liked her second essay so much that he left her alone for the next two lessons. When caught talking in a lesson, after that, Mr. Keesing assigned her the third essay. Quack, quack, said Mistress Chatterbox. Her entire class laughed at the title. Anne laughed too, but she was also running out of ideas by this time. It was she who decided this time to come up with something else. So, with a friend's help, she wrote a poem about a family of ducks. In the poem, the three baby ducklings were beaten to death by their father for quacking too much. This poem was received very well. Mr. Keesing read this poem aloud to the class. Since then, she could talk in class and wasn't assigned any extra homework. In fact, Anne humorously confides in Kitty Mr. Keesing's jokes often after that. So, see students how difficult the life of Anne Frank was. The Diary of a Young Girl is based on the theme of sacrifice of one human being for another. Or, in other words, we can say that it is a universal symbol of tolerance, strength, and hope. In fact, Anne Frank's diary has become famous throughout the world. The diary provides a vivid and poignant glimpse into the world of a young Jewish girl living in Nazi occupied Holland. An underlying theme of Anne's account is man's inhumanity to man. Simply because of her religious beliefs, Anne is confined and lives in constant fear of death. The diary of Anne Frank clearly describes the teacher-student relationship, class atmosphere, and discipline. Anne, who talks a lot in the class, gets punished by Mr. Keesing, her maths teacher. He asks her to write essays as punishment, which is learning in disguise, because he wanted her to focus on studies. He cannot be blamed for the punishment as he did it for the development of Anne. The teacher-student relationship is very respectful and sacred. Do you believe that? Okay. It is about discipline and classroom manners which are essential for every student as well as teacher. Otherwise, both teaching or learning could hamper. This relationship is clearly shown in Mr. Keesing and Anne Frank's action as they both try to joke on each other but in a very humorous and healthy manner. So, this healthy relationship is needed everywhere in the class for effective teaching and learning. In the story from the diary of Anne Frank, we conclude that a young student needs to talk and feel joyous in order to stay mentally fit. Students, the lesson has ended here and I hope you have understood well word by word. Thank you.